Chapter 1. Flirting with the Boss. I wake up to the distinct feel of expensive sheets, soft, cool, and undeniably luxurious. My mind, still foggy from sleep, struggles to grasp at the stray pieces of last night's memory. Slowly, the unfamiliarity of the room seeps in, stirring something inside me. Where the hell am I? I blink a few times, scanning the room. High ceilings, polished wood floors, and minimalist decor that screams, I have too much money and too little time. No mess. No personal touch. A penthouse? Definitely a man's space. Definitely not mine. Panic hits me all at once as I feel the weight beside me. I turn my head cautiously, praying that the sinking feeling in my stomach is just paranoia. But, of course, life isn't that kind. There he is, a mess of tousled dark hair against the pillow, his back to me, his bare, toned back. A slow, steady rise and fall with each breath, like he doesn't have a care in the world. I don't need to see his face to know who he is. I'd recognize that back anywhere. James Lockhart, my boss. Oh, my God. I freeze, trying to keep my breath shallow, praying I can vanish without waking him up. But the more I think, the louder my thoughts get, swirling in a crescendo of, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, I need to get out of here. Like, yesterday. Carefully, I peel back the sheets, as if I'm disarming a bomb. My legs, shaking slightly, slide out from under the covers, my feet meeting the cold hardwood floor. Perfect. A quick glance at my clothes scattered across the floor, his clothes mixed in, makes my heart pound faster. Do I grab them? Do I just go? I can't decide fast enough. Going somewhere? His voice is a deep rumble, raspy from sleep, and it sends a shiver down my spine, one I absolutely do not want to acknowledge. The man is like a walking temptation, and last night I clearly gave in. Damn it. I close my eyes, mentally cursing myself. Taking a deep breath, I turn my head slightly, just enough to catch his smug smirk out of the corner of my eye. He's propped himself up on one elbow now, that signature Lockhart charm etched all over his face. His hair is sexily disheveled, the same as it was last night when he kissed me, hard, insistent, like he knew I wouldn't resist. And clearly I hadn't. My brain short-circuits. Every witty response I've ever had evaporates under his gaze. Yeah, I was just thinking I should, leave. He raises an eyebrow, that damn eyebrow that always makes him look like he knows something I don't. Leave? So soon? I scramble to save face, gathering what little dignity I have left. Well, I'm sure you've got meetings or whatever, being a big-shot CEO and all. Meetings? He laughs, low and deep, as if the idea of anything else being important right now is absurd. It's Saturday, Emma. Saturday? Oh God, I didn't even realize. My heart skips as his gaze softens, an intimate edge creeping into his voice. You don't have to go, I really should. I bend down, snatching my bra off the floor as quickly as humanly possible, all too aware that his eyes are following my every move. His smirk widens like this is some sort of game, and I refuse to let him win. I yank my shirt over my head, tugging at it like it can shield me from the mortification threatening to choke me. This can't happen again, I say, trying to inject some authority into my voice. My fingers fumble as I pull on my pants, wobbling as I try to maintain my balance. My nerves are shot, and Lockhart's piercing gaze isn't helping. I don't recall you complaining last night, he says casually, reclining back against the headboard, looking every bit the arrogant, irresistible ass that he is. It makes me want to throw something at him. Or kiss him. Damn it. I shoot him a sharp glare, ignoring the heat that rises to my cheeks. That was a mistake. Is that what we're calling it now? His tone is light, teasing, like he's thoroughly enjoying watching me fluster. Because I'm pretty sure you said my name more than once. My face burns. Of course he remembers. I shove my shoes on, deliberately avoiding his eyes. This was a lapse in judgment, I say firmly, straightening up and crossing my arms as if that will somehow make me immune to his charm. A one-time thing. That's it. He just stares at me, unblinking, and for a moment, I think I've won. Then, his lips curve into a wicked grin. If you say so, Emma. I feel my resolve waver, but I steel myself, holding on to the last shred of dignity. I turn, grabbing my purse, and march toward the door, my heart hammering in my chest. But just as I reach for the handle, his voice stops me. Soft, low, and undeniably confident. I'll see you at the office on Monday. It's not a question, it's a promise. As I slip out of the room, my pulse races. I might have walked out, but something tells me leaving James Lockhart behind is going to be a lot harder than I thought. and maybe, just maybe, part of me doesn't want to. Chapter 2. It's Monday, and I'm 30 minutes early for work. Not because I'm some overachiever or anything. No, I'm early because I'm trying to avoid him. James Lockhart, the man who, as of 72 hours ago, became the most dangerous distraction in my life. It's not like I haven't worked with him for the last 2 years, enduring his smooth confidence, his intense gaze, the way he makes everyone in a room hang on his every word. I've dealt with it all before. But now, everything's changed. I stride into the office, trying to focus on anything but the memory of his hands on me, the way his lips felt against mine. Nope, none of that. That's buried. We are burying that deep. I just need to get through today like any other Monday. It's fine, totally fine. Morning, Emma, Chloe says, flashing a bright smile as she hands me my usual coffee. Chloe is the receptionist, and thank God for her cheery presence because right now, I need all the positivity I can get. I force a smile back. Thanks, Chloe. You're a lifesaver. You're in early, she notes, raising an eyebrow. Big project? Big project? Oh, if only she knew. Something like that, I mumble, trying to sound casual. Just wanted to get a head start. She gives me a knowing look. Well, good luck. You've got that Lockhart meeting in an hour, right? I nearly choke on my coffee. What meeting? Chloe frowns, flipping through her tablet. The one with the marketing team? You're leading it with Mr. Lockhart. Of course I am. Because the universe hates me. Right? Totally forgot about that. I wave it off, pretending I'm not having a minor heart attack at the thought of sitting across from James in a room full of people, pretending like nothing happened. Chloe gives me a sympathetic smile as I retreat to my office. I drop my bag on the desk and stare at the computer screen, willing myself to focus. Work. Just focus on work. I open the latest marketing reports and try to absorb the information, but the words blur together. I check the clock. 45 minutes until the meeting. I'm not ready for this. Not ready to see him. I haven't even figured out how I'm going to act around him. Should I be cold and distant? Professional but cool? Pretend it never happened? I don't even know what he's thinking. Does he regret it? Does he care? I don't even have time to process it before there's a knock at my door. Come in, I say, my voice a little too high-pitched. The door opens, and there he is. James Lockhart in all his infuriatingly composed glory. He's dressed in his usual sharp, tailored suit, a dark navy today, making his eyes stand out even more. And of course he's grinning. That damn, knowing grin. Emma, he greets, leaning against the doorframe like he owns the place. Which technically, he does. We need to discuss the presentation before the meeting. Got a minute? No, I do not have a minute, my brain screams, but instead I nod like an idiot. Sure. He steps inside, closing the door behind him. The room suddenly feels smaller, like there's not enough air. He walks over to my desk, unbuttoning his suit jacket, and I catch a whiff of his cologne, something subtle but maddeningly intoxicating. So, he starts, pulling a chair up beside me, far too close for my sanity. How are you? How am I? Seriously? I'm fine, I say stiffly, keeping my eyes glued to the computer screen. Just ready for the meeting. You sure? His voice dips low, teasing. You seem a little tense. I clench my jaw, refusing to look at him. I'm fine, James. There's a pause and I can feel him watching me, waiting for me to crack. But I refuse. I will not give him the satisfaction. Finally, he sighs and leans back in his chair, crossing his arms. All right, if you're going to pretend nothing happened, I can play that game too. My heart skips. So, we're doing this? Right here, right now? I glance at him, trying to look composed. What exactly are you expecting me to say? He raises an eyebrow. I'm not expecting anything, Emma, but you can't act like Friday didn't happen. I'm not acting like it didn't happen, I snap. I'm just choosing not to let it interfere with my job. You should probably do the same. He chuckles, but it's not his usual playful one. This one is low, almost dangerous. You think I'm not aware of how complicated this could get? I am. Trust me. But that doesn't change the fact that something happened between us. You felt it. I bite the inside of my cheek, my pulse racing. It was a mistake. Was it? I blink, caught off guard by the bluntness of his question. He's watching me so intently, like he's daring me to be honest. But I can't go there. Not now. I shake my head. It can't happen again. James leans forward, his expression softening, but there's something determined in his eyes. Emma, you can't just shut this down because it scares you. I open my mouth to argue, but nothing comes out. Because he's right. It does scare me. More than I want to admit, but I'm not about to let him know that. I need to keep control. I can't let him have that power over me. I stand abruptly, pushing my chair back. We need to focus on the meeting. Whatever this is, it's not going to affect my job. James stands too, towering over me now, but there's something different in his expression. His usual confidence is there, but there's a flicker of something more. Something real. Vulnerability? No, that can't be it. Not James Lockhart. He steps closer, his voice low and serious. I respect your boundaries, Emma, but don't lie to yourself about what's happening here. Before I can respond, there's a knock on the door. We both freeze, the tension between us palpable. Meeting in 5 minutes, Chloe calls from the other side. James steps back, his face slipping back into that charming, unreadable mask. Guess we better get to work. I nod, my throat dry. Yeah, let's do that. As I gather my things for the meeting, I can't shake the feeling that I've just lost some invisible battle. And worse, I'm not entirely sure I wanted to win. Chapter 3. The meeting is a blur. I manage to stay professional, somehow, but my mind is anything but focused. Sitting across the conference table from James feels like being stuck in a slow-motion train wreck. Every time he speaks, I feel the weight of his gaze on me, the subtle pull of his presence, and it's making it impossible to concentrate. He's so collected. It's infuriating. He's going over the marketing numbers like nothing happened between us, like we didn't spend Friday night entangled in the mess of whatever this is. And me, I'm barely keeping it together. Every casual glance he throws my way feels like a challenge. I keep my focus on the team, on their ideas, nodding at the appropriate moments, but I can feel him. The unspoken tension, thickening the air between us. Even when he's not looking at me, I know he's there, silently testing my resolve. An hour later, when the meeting wraps up, I'm the first one out of the room, practically running back to my office. I close the door behind me and lean against it, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I was holding. This cannot go on. I can't keep playing this game with him. It's not sustainable. I sink into my chair, trying to regain some semblance of normalcy. My inbox is overflowing, and I should be focusing on the dozen emails waiting for replies, but all I can think about is him, that stupid, confident smirk. The way he said my name on Friday night, low and teasing, like he had all the time in the world. I don't know how long I sit there, staring blankly at my computer before there's a knock on my door. I freeze. Emma? It's James, of course. His voice, deep and measured, sends a shiver down my spine. Can we talk? No, we cannot talk, is what I want to say. But instead, I clear my throat and say, come in. He steps inside, and for the first time since Friday night, there's no smirk, no teasing gleam in his eyes. He looks serious, which, weirdly, unsettles me more than anything else. He closes the door behind him and crosses the room, standing a few feet away from my desk. He doesn't sit, doesn't lean against anything, just stands there, hands in his pockets, staring at me like he's carefully choosing his next words. We can't keep avoiding this, he says after a moment, his tone even. It's going to affect work if we don't talk about it. I straighten in my chair, trying to keep my voice steady. There's nothing to talk about. It was a mistake. We move on. James raises an eyebrow, clearly not buying it. You really think that's going to work? I open my mouth to respond, but I hesitate. The thing is, he's right. We can't pretend like it didn't happen. The tension between us is impossible to ignore, and it's only going to get worse the more we try to sweep it under the rug. But acknowledging it? Talking about it? That feels even more dangerous. I don't know what you expect me to say, James, I finally admit, crossing my arms. We slept together. It happened. But that doesn't mean anything has to change. We can be professional. He studies me for a long moment, and I can't quite read the expression in his eyes. Is that what you want? His question hangs in the air, heavy and loaded with everything we're not saying. I know what he's asking. Do I want to pretend like it was just some meaningless fling? Do I want to keep pretending that this thing between us, whatever it is, can just be ignored? I don't answer right away because the truth is, I don't know what I want. I want my job. I want stability. I want my life to stay simple. But James Lockhart complicates everything. He always has. I start, But my voice falters. I take a breath, forcing myself to meet his gaze. I think it's better if we don't make this into something it's not. We work together. That's all. For a split second, something flickers in his eyes. Disappointment, maybe? But it's gone so quickly I almost convince myself I imagined it. He gives a small nod, his jaw tightening ever so slightly. All right, he says, his voice clipped. If that's what you want. It feels like a victory, but it's hollow, like I've won the battle, but lost something more important. He turns to leave, and for a brief moment I feel a pang of regret, an almost unbearable urge to stop him. To tell him that maybe I don't want to pretend, maybe I want something more. But I don't. Instead, I watch as he walks out of my office, closing the door behind him with a soft click. And that's that. I should feel relieved. This is what I wanted, right? Professionalism, boundaries. Everything back in its neat little box. But as I sit there in the silence of my office, I can't shake the feeling that I've just made a mistake, a different kind of mistake. I throw myself into work for the rest of the day, drowning in spreadsheets and reports, anything to keep my mind off of him. But it's no use. His presence lingers like a shadow, creeping into every corner of my thoughts. Later that afternoon, I get an email notification. It's from James. Subject: Follow up, Emma. I need you to review the numbers for the Baxter project and send me a revised report by end of day tomorrow. Let me know if you need any clarification. Best, James Lockhart, CEO, Lockhart Enterprises. I roll my eyes. Of course he's signing it off like that, like we're back to just boss and employee. Which is what I wanted, right? I shake my head and reply with a brief acknowledgement, trying not to think about how cold and formal the whole exchange feels. As the day drags on, I convince myself that I'll get over it. This awkward tension will pass, and things will go back to normal. They have to. But as I pack up to leave for the day, I can't help but wonder if James feels the same way. Or if he's sitting in his office right now, thinking about Friday night just as much as I am. Because despite what I said, I can't stop thinking about it, and I'm not sure I want to. Chapter 4. Tuesday morning arrives far too quickly, and with it the gnawing sense that nothing is going back to normal. I've been replaying every moment of yesterday's awkward exchange with James in my head, overanalyzing each word, each pause, each unreadable expression. I try to brush it off as I head into the office, armed with caffeine and sheer determination. Today will be different. Today I'll focus. No distractions. No James Lockhart hijacking my thoughts. I'm a professional, damn it. As I step out of the elevator, I feel a strange sense of calm. That is, until I see him. James is standing near the reception desk, talking to one of the senior VPs. He's laughing, looking far too relaxed for someone who's caused me so much internal turmoil. His suit is impeccable, as always, and that stupid, infuriating charm radiates off of him like it's effortless. Our eyes meet briefly, and in that split second, the calm I'd managed to build up shatters. He gives me a quick nod, polite and detached, and I offer a tight smile in return before quickly turning down the hallway to my office. I close the door behind me, pressing my back against it, trying to regain some composure. This is ridiculous. I can't keep reacting like this every time I see him. I have to find a way to move past this. I sit at my desk, opening my laptop, and diving straight into work. The Baxter project numbers need to be revised, and it's the perfect excuse to bury myself in something productive. For a few hours, it works. I manage to lose myself in the spreadsheets, making notes and adjustments, trying to think like the old Emma, the one who wasn't constantly on edge around her boss. But just as I'm settling into a groove, there's a knock at my door. I freeze, already knowing who it is before I even answer. "Come in," I say, my voice sounding much calmer than I feel. James steps inside, Ramat closing the door behind him. The room feels smaller again, just like yesterday, and I can't help but notice how his presence fills every inch of space. He's carrying a folder under his arm and looks annoyingly collected as usual. "I wanted to go over the Baxter revisions with you," he says, walking over to my desk. "Got a minute?" I nod, keeping my expression neutral, though my heart is racing. "Sure." He pulls up a chair beside me, flipping open the folder, and spreading out the documents in front of us. I focus on the numbers, trying to keep things strictly business. But I can feel him next to me, too close, too familiar, despite the forced professionalism between us. James points to a section of the report. I think we're underestimating the market impact for Q3. We should adjust the projections to reflect the latest data from the East Coast branch. Right, I say, leaning in to look at the figures. But all I can think about is the way his arm brushes mine. The faint scent of his cologne, the memory of his touch. I try to push it all away, but it lingers like a dangerous undertow, pulling me closer. I make a note in the margin, my hand trembling slightly. James notices. Of course, he does. He's always been observant. He clears his throat. Emma, about yesterday. I cut him off, shaking my head. No, we don't need to talk about it. We said we'd move on, right? He pauses, looking at me with a mixture of frustration and something I can't quite place. We did say that, but I don't think either of us has actually moved on. I set down my pen, exhaling slowly. James, we can't keep doing this. You're my boss. I know that, he says, his voice softening. But I can't just pretend like Friday night didn't happen. And I don't think you can either. His words hit me like a punch to the gut, and suddenly, the walls I've been trying so hard to build start to crack. I stand up, needing some distance, needing air. I move toward the window, looking out at the city below, my back to him. This is so messed up, I mutter, mostly to myself. James is quiet for a moment before he speaks again. I know it complicates things, but it's not something I want to forget. His admission sends a jolt through me, and I close my eyes, fighting the emotions swirling inside me. I want to be rational, to make the smart choice, but when it comes to James, nothing feels simple. Nothing feels rational. I turn around to face him, leaning against the windowsill. What exactly are you saying, James? You want to, what? Start something with me? In the middle of all this? He stands up, his eyes locked on mine, unwavering. I'm saying that whatever's between us, it's not going away. We can either ignore it and let it keep messing with us, or we can figure out what this is. His honesty disarms me, leaving me at a loss for words. I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't expecting him to actually care. I was bracing for indifference, for him to move on like he always does. But here he is, standing in front of me, offering something I never thought he would, vulnerability. And what happens when it all falls apart, I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. What happens when this thing between us blows up? Because it will, James. We both know it will. He takes a step closer, his expression soft but serious. I don't know, but I'd rather find out than live with regrets. I bite my lip, torn between the sensible part of me that wants to run and the part of me that's screaming to take the risk. James Lockhart has always been the man I couldn't touch, the one I wasn't supposed to want, but now he's standing here, offering me something real. I don't know if I can do this, I admit, my heart pounding. He takes another step closer, his voice low and steady. You don't have to decide right now, but I'm not walking away, Emma. Not from this. The air between us hums with tension, thick and electric. I can feel my defenses crumbling piece by piece as his gaze holds mine. I should end this conversation. I should walk away before I get in too deep. But I don't. Instead, I find myself stepping forward, closing the distance between us. My heart is in my throat as I look up at him, searching his face for any sign of hesitation. But there's none. He's all in, and suddenly, so am I. Before I can stop myself, I reach out, my fingers grazing the fabric of his suit jacket. It's a small gesture, but it's enough to break the dam between us. James closes the space between us in an instant, his hands gently cupping my face, his lips hovering just inches from mine. Are you sure? He whispers, his breath warm against my skin. I don't answer with words. Instead, I lean into him, letting the weight of the moment take over, and kiss him. This time there's no hesitation, no second guessing, just the raw, undeniable pull that's been building between us for far too long. His arms wrap around me, pulling me closer, and for the first time in days, I stop thinking. I stop worrying about what comes next, about how complicated this could get. All I know is that right now, in this moment, I don't care. Because for once, it feels right, and for now, that's enough. Chapter 5. I wake up the next morning with sunlight streaming through my bedroom window, my head resting on James's bare chest. His arm is loosely draped around me, his breathing steady as he sleeps. For a moment, everything feels peaceful, almost too peaceful, like the calm before a storm. Reality starts to creep back in. What did I just do? I gingerly lift my head, trying to move without waking him. I don't trust myself to face him in the quiet of this early morning, where everything feels too raw, too real. My mind is already racing, sorting through a million different scenarios, none of which end well. This was supposed to be a one-time thing, right? But last night felt like more than just a fling. It felt dangerous. Emotionally dangerous. And that's exactly why I need to get out of here. I start to slide out of bed, moving as quietly as possible, but before I can make it 2 steps, I feel a hand wrap around my wrist. "Where are you going?" James's voice is groggy, still thick with sleep, but there's something else there too, concern. I stop, my heart pounding in my chest. I thought I'd grab some coffee. He doesn't release my wrist, and I turn to look at him. His eyes are open now, a soft smile playing on his lips. "You're running, aren't you?" I freeze, caught. "No, You're definitely running," he says, sitting up and pulling me gently back onto the bed. "Why?" I glance away, chewing on my bottom lip. How do I explain the war going on inside my head? The part of me that wants to stay tangled up with him, and the other part, the louder, more rational part, that knows this is a bad idea. James tugs me back under the covers, his arm wrapping around my waist, pulling me close. "I know you're overthinking," he murmurs against my hair. "You always do." I swallow hard, my pulse quickening. "This is complicated, James." "Yeah, it is," he agrees, his tone casual but honest. "But life's complicated, Emma. You're not going to scare me off by acknowledging that." I look up at him, startled by the calm in his voice. "You're not worried about this? About us?" "Of course I am," he says, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing patterns on my skin. "But I also know that I'm not willing to let you go because it's complicated." I blink, surprised by his straightforwardness. This is the James Lockhart I'm not used to. The one who's willing to have these messy, honest conversations. The one who's not just charming and confident, but also vulnerable. And it's terrifying how much I like this version of him. "I don't know how to do this," I admit, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to mix work and whatever this is." He pauses, then looks down at me, his expression thoughtful. "Emma, I don't have all the answers. I'm just as in the dark as you are. But I do know one thing. I want this. I want us." My breath catches in my throat, and for a moment, I can't speak. There's a sincerity in his eyes that floors me, and I realize just how much he's putting on the line by saying this. He's risking his carefully crafted professional image, his control, and that's not something I ever expected from him. I sit up slightly, pulling the blanket around me as I process his words. What if it doesn't work? He reaches up, brushing a strand of hair away from my face. Then it doesn't work. But I'd rather try and fail than not try at all. It's such a simple statement, but it hits me like a punch to the gut. For someone who's built their life around control and careful planning, he's willing to take a risk here, on us. And maybe that's the most honest thing either of us has done in a long time. I lean into him, resting my forehead against his. "I'm scared, James." "I know," he says softly, kissing my temple. "But you don't have to be scared alone." We stay like that for a while, wrapped up in the quiet intimacy of the morning, letting the world outside fade away. It's easy, being with him like this. No barriers, no pretenses. But the looming weight of reality is still there, hovering just out of reach, waiting for us to face it. Eventually I pull away, needing to get out of bed before I sink too deep into the comfort of it all. "I should get ready for work," I say, trying to sound casual, even though my heart is still hammering in my chest. James watches me, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You know you don't have to rush off. You're already here, and I've got coffee in the kitchen." I shake my head, laughing softly. "I'm not letting you make this a habit." "Oh, it's already a habit," he says with a playful smirk, sliding out of bed himself. He pulls on a pair of sweatpants and walks toward the kitchen. "But fine, you win this round. Coffee first, business later." I watch him disappear around the corner, my heart doing that annoying flip-flop thing it does whenever he's near. I grab my clothes from last night, slipping them on as I try to regain some sense of normalcy. But the truth is, nothing about this feels normal. It feels right. And that's what scares me the most. By the time I join him in the kitchen, he's already pouring 2 cups of coffee. He hands me one with a smile, and we settle into a comfortable silence, sipping our drinks and stealing glances at each other like 2 teenagers trying to figure out what's next. As I lean against the counter, Watching him, I realize something. Despite all the complications and risks, this doesn't feel like a mistake anymore. It feels like the beginning of something I didn't know I needed. James glances at me over the rim of his cup, a sly smile playing on his lips. You know, if we're doing this, I'm going to expect you to be a little less formal at work. I arch an eyebrow. Oh, and how exactly am I supposed to do that? Call you James during meetings instead of Mr. Lockhart. His eyes gleam with mischief. I wouldn't complain. I roll my eyes, but I can't help the smile that tugs at my lips. Don't push your luck. I don't need luck, he teases, setting down his cup and walking over to me. He wraps his arms around my waist, pulling me close. I've got you. I laugh, shaking my head. You're impossible. And yet, here we are, he murmurs, pressing a kiss to my forehead. As I lean into him, feeling the warmth of his embrace, I realize that maybe this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Complicated, messy, and full of uncertainty, but also full of possibility. And for now, that's enough. Chapter 6. The office feels different today. I step off the elevator, balancing my usual coffee and to-go bag in one hand, and suddenly the familiar environment feels charged, like there's a current buzzing beneath the surface. Or maybe it's just me. Because today, everything is different. I'm no longer just Emma, marketing manager, trying to stay on the safe side of professional boundaries. Now, I'm Emma, the woman who spent the night wrapped in the arms of her boss. The man I never thought would break through my walls. It's dizzying, knowing that we've crossed that line, that we're standing in this uncharted territory. But the weird thing? I don't feel regret. I feel alive, like I've taken a breath after holding it for years. Chloe flashes me her usual bright smile as I pass the reception desk. Morning, Emma, looking extra chipper today. I force a casual smile, trying to play it cool. Yeah, just had a good start to the day. She wiggles her eyebrows. Must be a really good start. I laugh, though it's nervous. Chloe's intuition is too sharp for my liking. You could say that. As I make my way to my office, I spot James coming out of a meeting room with a few department heads. He's in his typical suit, looking sharp and effortlessly in control. But there's a flicker of something different in his eyes when they meet mine. Something private, just for me. It's subtle, but enough to make my heart skip. He gives me the briefest nod, keeping everything professional, but the weight of that look carries a promise. I can't help but smile, feeling the heat rise to my cheeks as I duck into my office, closing the door behind me. This is insane. I'm already acting like some schoolgirl with a secret crush. I sit down at my desk, inhaling deeply to steady myself. Focus. It's just another workday, nothing out of the ordinary. Except for the fact that I'm wondering how I'm supposed to keep my cool when the very man I can't stop thinking about is just a few offices away. I pull up the project files I need to review, forcing my mind back to work. But every time my phone buzzes, I feel a rush of anticipation. Is it him? A message? A simple good morning? God, I've turned into that person. Half an hour later, I'm halfway through a report when my phone dings. I check the screen, and sure enough, it's a text from James. James, lunch? My office, 12:30? I stare at the screen, my pulse quickening. My office. The suggestion is innocent enough, but we both know there's nothing innocent about it. And that's the problem. We've barely had time to navigate this new dynamic, and now we're diving headfirst into secret lunches behind closed doors? I type out a response, hesitating for a moment before pressing send. I'll be there. The rest of the morning drags by painfully slowly. I try to focus on the reports in front of me, but my mind keeps drifting to James. Every thought is colored by what happened last night. The feel of his touch, the way he looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered. By the time 12:30 rolls around, I'm a mess of nerves and anticipation. I grab my bag, trying to act casual as I make my way down the hall to his office. As I approach the door, I hesitate for a second. This feels so dangerous. But the thrill of it is what pushes me to knock. Come in, his voice calls from the other side, calm and controlled as always. I open the door and step inside, closing it behind me. James is sitting at his desk looking over some documents, but when he glances up at me, that calm exterior falters just a little. His eyes soften, and a slow smile spreads across his face. Right on time, he says, standing up and walking over to me. The casual ease of his movements makes me relax, just a little. I try to be punctual, I say, my voice lighter than I feel. The room feels charged, and I'm hyper-aware of every inch of space between us. He steps closer, his gaze holding mine. I've always appreciated that about you. The way he says it sends a flutter through my chest. He's being playful, but there's a deeper layer beneath his words. I swallow, trying to ignore the heat rising to my cheeks. Are we really having lunch in here? I ask, glancing around the room like I need to verify this is strictly professional. James chuckles softly, the sound low and warm. That was the plan, unless you have something else in mind. My heart skips a beat at the suggestion, but I manage to keep my cool. I think we both know that's not a good idea. He studies me for a moment, his expression turning more serious. I know, but that doesn't mean I'm not thinking about it. His honesty catches me off guard, and for a moment, I forget where we are. My pulse quickens, and I take a small step back, needing space to think clearly. We're at work, James. I remind him softly, trying to keep things grounded. We can't. I know, he interrupts gently. I get it. I want to see you. Talk to you without all the pressure of meetings and deadlines. There's something genuine in his tone, something that softens the tension between us. He's not pushing. He's not trying to cross lines. He just wants time with me, outside of the chaos of the office. I exhale, letting my guard down just a little. Okay, I say quietly. Lunch. Just lunch. James smiles, the tension easing from his shoulders as he steps back, gesturing toward the small table near the window. Have a seat. I ordered from that cafe you like. I raise an eyebrow. You remembered? Of course, he says, sitting across from me. I pay attention. The casual intimacy of the moment surprises me. This isn't some power play or forbidden rendezvous. It's just us, and somehow that's more terrifying than anything else. We settle into an easy conversation over sandwiches, talking about work, the Baxter project, and everything in between. For a while, it feels like nothing's changed, like we're still just two colleagues sharing a meal. But then, every now and then, I catch him looking at me in a way that makes my heart race, like he's remembering every moment from last night. As we finish up, James leans back in his chair, his eyes never leaving mine. You know, he says, his voice softer now, I wasn't lying when I said I want to figure this out. I don't want to rush you, but I'm not backing off, Emma. I stare at him, my breath catching. He's not playing games. He's laying it all out there, and that scares me. But what scares me more is how much I want to trust him, how much I want to let this happen, despite all the complications. I'm not asking for answers right now, he continues, but I need you to know that I'm not walking away. The vulnerability in his voice shakes something loose inside me, something I've been holding on to for too long. I sit there, staring at him, the weight of his words settling between us. I don't know where this is going, I admit quietly, but I don't want to walk away either. James doesn't say anything at first. He just smiles, the kind of smile that makes me feel like we're on the same page, finally. He reaches across the table, taking my hand in his, and gives it a gentle squeeze. Then that's enough for now. And for the first time in days, I feel a sense of relief. Like maybe, just maybe, we can figure this out together. As I walk back to my office after lunch, my mind is still spinning, but there's a lightness in my step that wasn't there before. I don't know what the future holds for us, or how we'll manage to balance this delicate line between work and whatever this is. But for the first time, I'm not scared, because I'm starting to believe that maybe this complicated, messy, beautiful thing between us is worth the risk. Chapter 7. The rest of the afternoon is a blur of meetings and emails, but I'm walking on air. Every now and then, I catch myself smiling like a fool, thinking back to lunch with James. His words keep playing in my head. I'm not walking away. It's not just what he said, but the way he said it, with this quiet confidence that makes me think maybe, just maybe, we can make this work. But as the hours tick by, the weight of reality starts to settle back in. We've taken a step forward, yes, but the path ahead is still full of unknowns. This thing between us, it's delicate. One wrong move, one slip, and it could all come crashing down, taking our careers with it. I try to push those thoughts aside as the workday winds down, but they linger like a dark cloud on the horizon. By the time I pack up to leave, the initial rush of excitement has faded, replaced by a knot of nerves in my stomach. I grab my bag and head toward the elevator, only to stop dead in my tracks when I see James standing by the lobby, talking with one of the board members. I hesitate, unsure if I should interrupt, but before I can make a decision, his eyes meet mine. His expression softens immediately, and with a quick nod to the board member, he walks over to me. "Heading out?" he asks, his tone casual, but there's something warm in his eyes that makes my heart flutter. I nod. "Yeah, just finished up." He glances around, checking for onlookers before he lowers his voice. "Can I see you tonight? Away from here. No work, no pressure." My pulse quickens. This feels like a line we're about to cross, a line between work and something much deeper. And I'm not sure I'm ready for what comes next, but even as the doubts swirl, I find myself nodding. "Okay. Where?" James smiles, a slow, private smile that sends warmth coursing through me. "My place. We can order in, take it easy." Take it easy. Sure, because it's going to be that simple. I'm already feeling the familiar push-pull of excitement and fear, but I know I'm not going to say no. "Sounds good," I say, keeping my tone light even though my heart is racing. "What time?" 7? He suggests, his eyes scanning my face as if checking for any hesitation. 7's perfect. For a moment, we just stand there, the weight of unspoken possibilities hanging in the air. I can see the way his gaze lingers on me, that intensity simmering just beneath the surface. It's dangerous, intoxicating, and I know that tonight is going to change everything. "I'll see you then," I murmur, stepping back toward the elevator. I need space, some distance to process what I've just agreed to. James gives me one last smile, his eyes dark with a promise I'm not sure I'm ready to unpack, and then he's gone. By the time 7 o'clock rolls around, I'm a bundle of nerves. I spent way too long picking out what to wear, trying to strike the perfect balance between casual and... I didn't spend 2 hours freaking out about this. I finally settle on jeans and a simple sweater. Something easy, something safe. James's penthouse is just as sleek and modern as I remember. I've been here a handful of times for work functions, but never like this. Never with the knowledge that I'm not here for business, that tonight it's just us. I knock on the door, my heart pounding in my chest. There's a brief moment of silence before the door swings open, and there he is. James Lockhart, looking effortlessly handsome in dark jeans and a gray sweater that clings to his broad shoulders in a way that makes my pulse quicken. "Hey," he says, his voice warm, and for a second, the rest of the world fades away. "Hey," I manage, my nerves buzzing beneath my skin. This feels different, more real, more vulnerable. James steps aside, motioning for me to come in. "I ordered Thai. I hope that's okay." "Perfect," I say, though food is the last thing on my mind. I follow him into the living room, where the city skyline stretches out beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The space is elegant, but minimal. Like everything in James's life, it's polished, controlled. Except tonight, there's a softness to it. A casualness that makes me feel invited. Like this is more than just a place he lives. It's a place he wants to share with me. We settle onto the couch, and for a moment everything feels normal. Like we're two people who are just getting to know each other, not a boss and an employee navigating uncharted waters. We talk easily over dinner, about work, about random things, avoiding the deeper, more dangerous subjects. But underneath the light conversation, there's this undercurrent of tension, humming between us. Every glance, every brush of his hand feels charged, like we're teetering on the edge of something bigger. After dinner, we move to the couch, the remnants of takeout boxes scattered on the coffee table. The conversation slows, and suddenly the air between us feels thick, heavy with everything we're not saying. James is sitting close, too close, and I can feel the warmth of his body next to mine. He turns to face me, his expression soft but serious. "I've been thinking about you all day," he says, his voice low, intimate. My breath catches in my throat. "I've been thinking about you too." He reaches out, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering on my skin. "I don't want to make this complicated for you, Emma, but I'm not going to lie. I don't think I can pretend this isn't happening." I swallow hard, my heart hammering in my chest. "It is complicated, James. We both know that." "I know," he says softly, "but it doesn't have to be impossible." His words hang in the air, and for a moment everything feels suspended. Like we're standing at the edge of a cliff, waiting to see who's going to jump first. And then, without thinking, I close the distance between us. pressing my lips to his. The kiss is soft at first, tentative, but it quickly deepens, the weight of all our unspoken emotions crashing into that single moment. His hands find my waist, pulling me closer, and I melt into him, losing myself in the feel of him, the taste of him. This kiss, it's not like the one we shared that first night. That one was heated, impulsive, driven by months of pent-up attraction. But this is different. It's slow, deliberate, like we're both finally acknowledging what's been building between us. When we finally pull apart, we're both breathing hard, our foreheads resting together. James's hands tighten on my waist, his voice low and rough. This isn't just about last night. You know that, right? I nod, my heart swelling in my chest. I know. His eyes search mine, serious and vulnerable all at once. Then stay, tonight. It's not a question. It's a request. One that's laced with a quiet kind of intensity that sends a shiver down my spine. And I know deep down that if I stay tonight, everything will change. This won't just be a fling or an impulsive decision. This will be the start of something real, something that could unravel both of our lives. But in this moment, I don't care. I'll stay, I whisper, my voice barely audible. James's grip tightens, and before I know it, he's pulling me into another kiss, this one deeper, hungrier. And for the first time in a long time, I stop thinking. I stop worrying about the consequences, about what comes next. Because right now, this moment, this connection, is all that matters. And for once, I'm ready to let it all fall. Chapter 8. The next morning feels like waking up in a dream. I open my eyes to the soft glow of early morning light filtering through the sheer curtains. For a moment, I don't move, savoring the warmth of the bed, the softness of the sheets. And then, I feel him. James's arm draped over my waist, his steady breathing beside me. It feels surreal, like I've stepped into a parallel universe where everything is simpler, softer, where I don't have to worry about the complications that come with our relationship. But as the fog of sleep clears, the weight of reality settles over me. This isn't a dream, this is real. And with that reality comes consequences. I carefully slide out from under his arm, trying not to wake him. I need space, a moment to think. The coolness of the penthouse floor bites at my feet as I tiptoe toward the bathroom. I glance over my shoulder, half expecting to see James stir, but he's still sleeping, peaceful and unaware of the storm brewing inside me. Once I'm in the bathroom, I lean against the counter, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My hair is a mess, my face flushed with the remnants of last night, but none of that matters. What matters is the question echoing in my mind. What now? I splash some water on my face, trying to shake the uncertainty, but it lingers, heavy and oppressive. Whatever this is between James and me, it's complicated. It's not something we can keep ignoring or hiding, no matter how much we want to. I stand there for a few minutes, just breathing, trying to regain some sense of control. But when I open the door to leave, I'm greeted by the sight of James standing in the doorway, his hair rumpled from sleep, his eyes sharp and unreadable. "You okay?" he asks, his voice husky from sleep. I swallow, suddenly feeling exposed. Yeah, just needed a minute. He watches me carefully, his gaze intense. It's like he can see right through me, straight to the mess of thoughts I'm trying so hard to organize. He steps closer, his hand resting gently on my arm. "Talk to me." I let out a shaky breath, leaning against the bathroom doorframe. "I don't know how to do this, James." "Do what?" "This." I gesture between us, my voice small. "Us. Whatever this is." He steps even closer, his hand sliding down my arm until he's holding my hand. "We don't have to figure it all out right now, Emma." "But we do, don't we?" I ask, my voice cracking slightly. "Because this isn't just some fling. You're my boss, and that complicates everything." He sighs softly, squeezing my hand. "I know it does, but we'll figure it out, together." I stare at him, searching his face for any sign of hesitation. But there's none. He's looking at me like he's all in, like he's not afraid of the risks. And maybe that's what scares me the most, that he's ready to dive in while I'm still standing at the edge, terrified of falling. "I don't want to mess this up," I whisper. "You won't," he says, his voice steady. "We won't." I want to believe him. I want to believe that we can navigate this, that we can make it work without everything blowing up in our faces. But I've always been cautious, always careful. And this, falling for my boss, feels like throwing caution to the wind. James reaches up, gently tilting my chin so that I'm looking him in the eyes. Emma, I don't have all the answers, but I do know that I don't want to lose this, whatever it is. I don't want to lose you. My heart skips, and for a moment, the uncertainty fades, replaced by a warmth that spreads through my chest. He's being honest, vulnerable, and that's something I never expected from him. I thought James Lockhart was all business, cold, calculated, untouchable. But now, standing here in his arms, I see the man behind the CEO, and it makes me want to believe that maybe, just maybe, this could work. I nod, the tension in my body easing just a little. Okay, I whisper. We'll figure it out. A slow smile spreads across his face, and he leans in, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead. Good, because I'm not letting you go. We stand there for a moment, wrapped up in each other, the weight of the world temporarily lifting. But even as I melt into his embrace, the reality of our situation lingers in the back of my mind. This might feel right now, but how long can we keep it up? How long before the complications catch up to us? The day starts to blur together as I make my way to work. James and I agreed to take separate cars, knowing that arriving together would set off alarms we weren't ready to deal with yet. But the whole drive, I'm caught in this strange limbo, torn between the warmth of our morning together and the cold reality of the office. As soon as I step off the elevator, I feel the difference. The work environment, once something I could control, now feels like a battlefield I have to navigate. Every glance, every conversation, holds the potential for someone to notice something's changed. I sit at my desk trying to bury myself in work, but the usual rhythm isn't there. My mind keeps drifting back to James. How we left things. How we're supposed to keep this under wraps without losing our minds. I glance at my phone more times than I'd like to admit, hoping for a message from him, but nothing comes. By mid-morning, I'm wound so tight that when Chloe pops into my office, I nearly jump out of my chair. Whoa, you okay? She asks, her brow furrowed with concern. Yeah, sorry, just a little distracted today, I say, forcing a smile. She tilts her head, giving me one of her all-too-knowing looks. This wouldn't have anything to do with a certain Mr. Lockhart, would it? My heart stutters in my chest, and I freeze. Does she know? Has she noticed something? My mind races, trying to figure out if I've given something away. What? No. Why would you say that? Chloe raises an eyebrow, smirking. Oh, come on, Emma. You've been locked in meetings with him for weeks, and now you're all jumpy whenever he's around. Something's up. I swallow, forcing myself to stay calm. It's just work stuff. You know how intense he can be. Chloe doesn't look convinced, but thankfully she doesn't push. All right, if you say so. Just don't let him stress you out too much. You've got this. I nod, giving her a tight smile as she leaves my office. But the second the door closes, I exhale shakily. That was close. Too close. I need to be more careful. If Chloe's already picking up on the tension, it's only a matter of time before others do too. And if word gets out, I don't even want to think about what would happen. I grab my phone, quickly typing out a message to James. Me, we need to be careful. Chloe's already suspicious. A few minutes later, my phone dings with a response. James, don't worry, we'll handle it. I'll come by your office later. I bite my lip, staring at the message. I want to trust him, to believe that we can handle this without everything spiraling out of control. But the pit in my stomach tells me that this is only the beginning. We've crossed a line. And now, there's no going back. As I sit there, staring at my phone, I can't shake the feeling that the storm is coming. And when it hits, it's going to be bigger than either of us expected. Chapter 9. The hours creep by slowly, a heavy weight pressing down on me as I try to go about my day. Each minute that passes without seeing James makes the tension in my body worse. My heart is caught in this relentless tug-of-war between wanting to keep everything professional and the undeniable pull toward him. But I know, deep down, we're teetering on the edge of something dangerous, something that could come crashing down at any moment. I try to keep my head down, answering emails, reviewing reports, but my mind is everywhere else. Chloe's words earlier, her suspicions, keep replaying in my head. How long can we keep this a secret? How long before someone puts two and two together? By the time lunch rolls around, my nerves are frayed. I've barely touched my food when there's a soft knock on my office door. I know who it is before I even look up. James steps inside, closing the door behind him. His expression is calm, but his eyes flicker with something, an undercurrent of concern that matches my own. "We need to talk," he says, his voice low but steady. I nod, already bracing myself. "I know." He walks over, leaning against the edge of my desk, his gaze fixed on me. "Chloe's suspicious?" I sigh, setting down my fork. I don't know if she's figured anything out yet, but she's asking questions. And if she's asking, it's only a matter of time before someone else does too. James runs a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. "We knew this would happen eventually." "Yeah, but I didn't think it would happen this fast." His eyes soften as he looks at me. "We don't have to make any decisions right now, Emma, but if this is too much for you..." "Don't." I cut him off, my voice sharper than I intended. "Don't give me an easy out, James. I'm not going to run just because things are complicated." He watches me carefully, as if weighing his next words. "I'm not giving you an out. I just want to make sure you're okay with all of this. I don't want you feeling trapped." "I don't feel trapped," I say softly, my hands resting on the edge of my desk as I meet his gaze. "But I'm scared, James. I'm scared of what happens if people find out. What it'll mean for us, for our jobs." He reaches out, taking my hand in his. "We'll handle it. We'll be smart about it, but I'm not going to pretend like this is just going to go away." The way he says it, so sure, so certain, makes my heart ache. He's right. This isn't something that's just going to disappear. We're in this now, for better or for worse. I squeeze his hand, trying to ground myself. "So what do we do?" James is quiet for a moment, his thumb brushing lightly over the back of my hand. "We keep this between us for now, but if it gets out, we'll deal with it, together." Together. The word brings me a strange sense of comfort, even in the midst of all the uncertainty. I nod, swallowing the knot of anxiety in my throat. "Okay." He gives me a small, reassuring smile, but there's a tension in his eyes that tells me he's just as worried as I am. This isn't going to be easy. We both know that. There's a knock on the door before I can respond, and we both tense. Chloe's voice filters in from the other side. "Emma, you have a call on line 2. It sounds important." James stands quickly, his expression slipping back into that careful mask of professionalism. He squeezes my hand once more before stepping away. "I'll let you get that." "Thanks," I say, trying to sound casual, but my mind is racing. He gives me a quick nod and slips out of the office just as I pick up the phone. I can barely focus on the conversation with the client. My thoughts are stuck on James, on what we're doing, on how thin the ice is beneath us. This balancing act is becoming harder and harder, and I can't shake the feeling that we're running out of time. Later that afternoon, I'm hunched over my desk, reviewing a proposal for the marketing team, when my phone buzzes. It's a text from James. "James, can we talk? I think we need to figure out what happens if people find out." My stomach drops as I stare at the screen. He's right, of course. We can't keep pretending that this won't come to light eventually. But the idea of having that conversation, of planning for the inevitable fallout, makes my chest tighten. I type out a quick response. "Me. Come by when you're free." I spend the next hour trying to work, but every click of the keyboard feels heavy, like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. When James finally knocks on my door again, my nerves are already shot. He steps inside, closing the door behind him and leaning against it for a moment, as if he's gathering his thoughts. His face is serious, more so than usual, and it makes my heart race. "I've been thinking," he starts, his voice low, measured, "about what happens if this comes out, what it could mean for both of us." I nod, bracing myself for whatever comes next, and James takes a deep breath, crossing the room and sitting down in the chair across from me. "I don't want you to feel like you're risking your career by being with me." "I'm not," I say quickly, but he holds up a hand, stopping me. "I know you say that now, but if people find out, things could change. The board, HR, they'll have questions. They'll want to know if we've crossed any lines, professionally." My heart pounds harder as he says the words out loud. It's what I've been afraid of from the start, the scrutiny, the rumors, the potential fallout. "What are you saying, James?" He looks at me, his expression torn. "I'm saying that if it comes down to it, I'll step back." "Step back?" I repeat, confused. "What do you mean?" "I'll recuse myself from anything involving you," he explains, his voice steady but soft. "If it makes things easier for you, if it protects you." I'll make sure I'm not in a position where there's a conflict of interest." The weight of his words sinks in, and for a moment I don't know how to respond. He's offering to make himself vulnerable, to take the fall if it comes to that. And it terrifies me, because I know what that could mean for him. For us. "I don't want you to step back," I say quietly. "I don't want to lose what we have." "You won't," he says quickly, leaning forward. "But I need you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to protect you, Emma, even if it means taking a step back from work." I shake my head, my heart aching. "James, I don't want you to sacrifice your career for me." He reaches across the desk, taking my hand in his. "This isn't just about work, Emma. This is about us, and I'm not going to let anything come between that." His words hang in the air, heavy with meaning. I can see the resolve in his eyes, the determination to make this work no matter what. And it scares me because I know how much he's willing to give up. "I don't want you to do this for me," I whisper, my voice shaky. "I don't want to be the reason you lose everything." "You won't be," he says softly, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "You'll be the reason I don't regret anything." My throat tightens, and I look away, trying to hold back the flood of emotions threatening to spill over. This is more than I ever expected, more than I ever thought I deserved, and it terrifies me. But at the same time, I know I can't walk away from this. From him. "I'm scared, James," I admit, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how this is going to end." He stands, coming around the desk and pulling me into his arms. "Neither do I," he murmurs against my hair. "But we'll face it together, no matter what." I close my eyes, sinking into his embrace, letting the warmth of his words wash over me. And for the first time, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, we can survive whatever comes next. But deep down, I know the storm is still coming, and when it hits, we'll have no choice but to face it head on. Chapter 10. The storm arrives sooner than either of us expected. It starts with whispers, little things, colleagues giving me lingering glances in the hallway, casual mentions of James's schedule in conversations that feel a little too pointed. At first, I brush it off, convincing myself it's all in my head. But soon, the whispers grow louder, and I can't ignore them anymore. The tipping point comes when I overhear two women from HR talking near the break room. Heard she's been spending a lot of time in his office. Late meetings, private lunches, one of them says, her voice low but unmistakably clear. "Seems risky, doesn't it? He's the CEO after all." "If anyone found out," the other replies, her tone dripping with insinuation. I feel the blood drain from my face. They're not just talking about James, they're talking about us. I slip back into my office, shutting the door behind me as my mind races. This is exactly what I feared. The rumors, the speculation. It's happening. And it's only a matter of time before it reaches someone higher up. Someone who could make things very difficult for both of us. I sit at my desk, staring blankly at my computer screen, my stomach twisted in knots. What do? Do I tell James? Do we try to get ahead of this before it blows up in our faces? Or do we wait, hope it fizzles out on its own? But I know deep down that hope is a luxury we don't have. I don't make it to lunch before James shows up at my door. The moment I see his face, I know he's heard something. His usual calm, composed demeanor is frayed around the edges, his jaw clenched as he steps into my office and shuts the door behind him. "We have a problem," he says, not bothering with small talk. I nod, already feeling the weight of what he's about to say. "I know, I heard some people in HR talking." He exhales sharply, running a hand through his hair. "It's worse than that. One of the board members approached me this morning. They've heard the rumors too. They're starting to ask questions." My heart sinks. This is it. The storm we've been dreading. And it's already here. "What did you tell them?" I ask, my voice barely steady. "I played it off," James says, his eyes dark with frustration. "I told them it was all nonsense, but they're not going to let it go. Not with how quickly the rumors are spreading." I swallow hard, my throat tight. "So what do we do?" James walks over to my desk, leaning against it as he looks at me with a mixture of determination and regret. "We have two options. We can deny everything, keep playing it off like it's just gossip. But that's risky. If someone decides to dig deeper..." He doesn't need to finish that sentence. We both know what could happen if they do. "Or," he continues, his voice softer now, We come clean, we tell them the truth and deal with whatever comes next. I stare at him, my heart pounding in my chest. You mean, admit to everyone that we're... James nods, his gaze steady. Yes. The weight of his words crashes over me, and I feel like I'm being pulled in two different directions. Coming clean means facing the consequences head on. It means risking everything, our careers, our reputations, for the sake of this relationship. But hiding it, lying about it, that feels just as dangerous. If anyone finds out that we've been lying, the fallout could be even worse. I don't know if I can do that, I admit, my voice small. What if they fire me? What if they fire you? James steps closer, his hand resting on my shoulder. They won't fire you, Emma. And if it comes to that, I'll fight for you. I'll take responsibility. You shouldn't have to do that, I say quickly, the panic rising in my chest. This isn't just on you. We both. I know, he cuts me off gently, his thumb brushing over my shoulder. But I'm not going to let you take the fall for this. If anyone's going to face the board, it's me. The sincerity in his voice makes my chest tighten. I can see how much he's willing to risk for this, for us. And it scares me, because I know how much he has to lose. I take a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of thoughts in my head. And if we tell them the truth, what happens then? James is quiet for a moment, his eyes searching mine. We don't know. They might accept it, or they might try to force one of us out. A cold chill runs down my spine at the thought. But James squeezes my shoulder gently, grounding me in the moment. I won't let that happen, he says, his voice firm. No matter what, we'll figure it out. Together. The word, together, echoes in my mind, offering a sliver of comfort in the midst of the chaos. But it's not enough to erase the fear gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. If we do this, if we come clean, we're stepping into uncharted territory. There's no going back. I stand up from my desk, pacing the small space of my office as I try to think through the options. Maybe we wait a little longer, see if it dies down? James shakes his head, his expression serious. I don't think we have that luxury anymore. Once the board is involved, it's only a matter of time before this blows up. I stop pacing, my hands trembling as I look at him. Are we really going to tell them everything? James steps forward, his hands settling on my arms, steadying me. We don't have to make that decision right now, but we need to be ready for whatever comes next. I meet his gaze, searching for any sign of hesitation, but all I see is resolve. He's not backing down. He's ready to face whatever storm comes our way. And for the first time, I realize that I am too. I nod slowly, feeling the weight of the decision settle over me. Okay, we'll face it. Together. James pulls me into his arms, holding me tight as the enormity of what we're about to do sinks in. No matter what happens, I'm not letting you go. I close my eyes, resting my head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. For a moment, the world outside fades away, and it's just the two of us, stronger together, even in the face of everything that's about to come crashing down. But the storm is already here, and soon we'll have to weather it. Together. Chapter 11. The decision hangs over us like a dark cloud, and no matter how hard I try to focus on work, I can't shake the feeling that we're teetering on the edge of a cliff. The rumors are swirling, growing louder with every passing day. Chloe's concerned glances, the hushed whispers in the hallway, they're all signals that something is about to give. I know James is right. We can't avoid this forever. But the thought of coming clean, of standing in front of the board and admitting that we've crossed the line between professional and personal, terrifies me. Not just because of what it might mean for my career, but because of what it might mean for us. James has been my anchor in this storm, but I can't shake the fear that once we face the consequences, everything will unravel. By mid-afternoon, I'm a bundle of nerves. I can't sit still, can't focus. The tension in the office is suffocating, and the weight of what's coming is pressing down on me from all sides. And then, it happens. I'm in the middle of reviewing a report when my office phone rings. The sound startles me, and for a split second I consider letting it go to voicemail. But something in my gut tells me to pick up. Emma Wright, I say, trying to keep my voice steady. Miss Wright, comes the clipped, no-nonsense voice of Catherine Brandt, one of the board members. We need to see you in the conference room. Now. My heart drops into my stomach. This is it, the moment we've been dreading. "I'll be right there," I manage to say, my throat tight. As I hang up the phone, panic grips me. I grab my things, my hands shaking, and head for the door. I don't know what's waiting for me in that conference room, but I know it's not going to be good. I'm halfway down the hall when James appears at my side, his expression unreadable. "I just got the call too," he says quietly, his voice low enough that no one else can hear. We walk side by side in tense silence, and every step feels heavier than the last. I steal a glance at James, trying to gauge what he's thinking, but his face is set in that calm, composed mask he wears so well. When we reach the conference room, the door is already open, and the sight that greets us sends a chill down my spine. Catherine Brandt is sitting at the head of the table, along with 2 other board members and the head of HR. They all look serious, too serious. "Have a seat," Catherine says, gesturing to the chairs in front of her. James and I sit down, and I feel like a schoolgirl about to be scolded by the principal. My palms are sweaty, and I have to resist the urge to wipe them on my skirt. Catherine doesn't waste any time. "We've heard some concerning rumors regarding your relationship," she says, her tone sharp and to the point. "Specifically, that you've engaged in a personal relationship while maintaining a professional one within this company." I swallow hard, my heart pounding in my chest. This is happening. It's really happening. James sits up straighter, his jaw tightening. "I take full responsibility," he says, his voice steady. "If there are consequences to be faced, they should be mine." Catherine raises an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "This isn't just about responsibility, Mr. Lockhart. This is about the integrity of this company and the potential conflict of interest your relationship may present." I can feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me, but I force myself to speak. "There's been no conflict of interest," I say, my voice trembling slightly but gaining strength as I go. "I've continued to do my job to the best of my ability, and nothing about my work has changed." The head of HR, a woman named Susan, leans forward. "We're not questioning your abilities, Miss Wright, but when a relationship like this becomes public knowledge, it creates challenges, both for you and for the company." "We're aware of the challenges," James says, his tone measured. "But we're also committed to maintaining a professional environment." Catherine steeples her fingers, studying us both with cool, calculating eyes. "Mr. Lockhart, you're the CEO of this company. Your decisions affect everyone in this room, and your actions set a precedent for the entire organization. You can't expect us to turn a blind eye to something like this." I can feel the blood draining from my face as her words sink in. James is the CEO, and that carries weight. Weight that I hadn't fully considered until this moment. It's not just about us, it's about the example he sets, the power dynamics at play. James doesn't flinch. I understand the position this puts the company in, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to ensure that this situation doesn't affect the business. If that means stepping back from certain responsibilities or recusing myself from decisions involving Ms. Wright, I will. The room falls into a tense silence as Catherine exchanges a look with the other board members. I can feel my heart in my throat, waiting for whatever comes next. After what feels like an eternity, Catherine speaks again. "We'll need to discuss this further before we come to any decisions. For now, I expect both of you to continue your work as usual, but understand that we'll be watching the situation closely. Any further escalation could result in disciplinary action, up to and including termination." Termination. The word hits me like a punch to the gut, and I have to fight to keep my expression neutral. I knew this was a possibility, but hearing it spoken out loud makes it all too real. James nods, his voice calm but firm. "Understood." "Good," Catherine says, her tone dismissive. "You're both excused." We stand up, and I can feel the tension radiating off James as we walk out of the conference room. The door clicks shut behind us, and for a moment, neither of us says a word. Then James exhales sharply, running a hand through his hair. "That could have been worse." "Worse?" I say, my voice barely above a whisper. "James, they basically threatened to fire us." He turns to me, his expression softening. "I know, but we still have time. They haven't made a decision yet. We just need to be careful." "Careful," I repeat, the word feeling hollow in my mouth. "How are we supposed to be careful when everyone is watching us?" James steps closer, his hand resting gently on my arm. "We'll figure it out. Together." The sincerity in his voice calms me, but the fear still lingers at the edges of my mind. We're walking a tightrope now, and one wrong step could send everything crashing down. I'm scared, James, I admit, my voice trembling. He pulls me into his arms, holding me tight. I know, he whispers, his lips brushing against my hair, but we'll get through this. I'm not letting you go. I close my eyes, sinking into his embrace, letting the warmth of his body steady me. But even as I stand there, wrapped up in the safety of his arms, the reality of our situation looms over us. We're not out of the woods yet, and the storm that's coming could tear everything apart. Chapter 12. The next few days at work are tense, like walking on glass. Every conversation feels like it's being scrutinized, every glance between James and me tinged with uncertainty. We've gone from barely managing to keep things quiet to being the center of attention, whether people openly admit it or not. I can't shake the feeling that we're being watched. Not just by the board, but by everyone. The office has become a minefield of whispers and side-eye glances, and it's suffocating. James, of course, seems unfazed. He moves through the office like the CEO he's always been, confident, commanding. But I can see the small signs, the way his jaw tightens when someone mentions the board, or the way his smile doesn't quite reach his eyes anymore. He's carrying the weight of this just as much as I am. We've had a few hushed conversations behind closed doors, but the tension between us is growing. It's not that the feelings have changed. If anything, they've deepened. But the pressure, it's starting to crack through the easy intimacy we had. By Friday, I'm exhausted, mentally, emotionally, physically. I've barely slept, and every time I close my eyes, I see Catherine Brandt's face, cold and unforgiving, reminding me that everything could come crashing down if we're not careful. I try to focus on the work in front of me, but my phone buzzes with a message from James. James, my office. Now. It's not a request, it's an order, and that sends a jolt of anxiety through me. I grab my things, my heart pounding as I make my way to his office. When I step inside, the door clicking shut behind me, I'm met with James pacing the room, his expression tight. What's going on? I ask, my voice laced with worry. He stops, turning to face me, and I can see it in his eyes. Something's changed. I just got off the phone with the board. My stomach drops. And? They want to meet with us again, he says, his voice strained. Monday morning. I sink into the nearest chair, my head spinning. What does that mean? They're not saying anything definitive yet, James interrupts, running a hand through his hair. But I think we both know what's coming. They're looking for an excuse to make a move. The words hang in the air, heavy with implication. This is it. The board is closing in, and there's no way out. What are we going to do? I ask, my voice small. James walks over to me, kneeling in front of my chair, his hands resting on my knees. I've been thinking about it all day, and I think I have a plan. I meet his gaze, my pulse quickening. What kind of plan? I'm going to step down, he says, his voice calm but firm. I blink, not sure I heard him right. Step down. James, no, you can't. I can, he cuts me off, his grip on my knees tightening, and I will. I shake my head, my heart pounding in my chest. James, you can't do that. You've built this company. You've worked so hard. And I'm not losing you because of it, he says, his voice low and steady. If stepping down means keeping you safe, keeping us from being torn apart, then that's what I'm going to do. I stare at him, stunned. This is his life, his career, his identity, and he's willing to walk away from it for me. The enormity of that hits me like a freight train, and suddenly, I feel like I'm drowning. You can't just throw it all away, I whisper, tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. Not for me. Not for this. James stands, pulling me up with him, his hands cupping my face. I'm not throwing anything away, Emma. I'm making a choice, and I'm choosing you. The words send a shiver down my spine, and for a moment I can't breathe. I want to tell him to stop, to reconsider, to think about what he's giving up. But the look in his eyes, the raw, unwavering determination, tells me that he's already made up his mind. I don't want you to regret this, I say, my voice cracking. I don't want you to hate me for making you give up everything. I could never hate you, James whispers, his thumb brushing away a tear that slipped down my cheek, and I'll never regret choosing you. I close my eyes, leaning into his touch, my heart aching. This is the man I've fallen for. Strong, selfless, willing to risk everything for the sake of what we have. And I love him for it. But it terrifies me too. What if? What if stepping down isn't enough? I ask, my voice barely audible. What if this doesn't fix things? James's hand tightens on my face, his voice steady but filled with quiet intensity. Then we'll figure it out. Together. The word together carries more weight now than it ever has. It's no longer just a promise, it's a lifeline, something we're clinging to as everything else falls apart around us. I take a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but the thought of James stepping down, of him giving up his position, his company, for me, it feels too big, too impossible. We can fight this, I whisper, the words slipping out before I can stop them. We can find a way to make it work without you leaving. James shakes his head, his expression soft but resolute. The board's already made up their mind, Emma. They want someone to blame. And I'm not letting that someone be you. I open my mouth to argue, to tell him that this isn't fair, that he shouldn't have to do this. But before I can say anything, he pulls me into his arms, holding me tightly against his chest. I love you, he whispers, the words warm against my ear. I'm not losing you over this. Not now, not ever. I cling to him, my fingers curling into his shirt as I try to hold back the sob building in my chest. I love him too. More than I've ever loved anyone. But the fear of what's coming, of what this will cost him, makes my heart ache. We stand there in silence, wrapped up in each other, as the weight of the decision presses down on us both. There's no easy way out of this, no path that doesn't lead to some kind of loss. But as I lean into James, his heart beats steady and strong beneath my cheek, I realize that maybe, just maybe, love is enough to carry us through. The weekend passes in a blur of anxiety and stolen moments. James spends most of his time on the phone with lawyers, preparing for what's to come. I can feel the tension in him, the weight of the decision he's about to make. But he never once wavers. By Sunday night, the reality of what's coming starts to sink in. Tomorrow, James will go to the board and offer his resignation. He'll step down from the company he's built, the position he's held for years. All because of me, because of us. As we lie in bed that night, the silence between us is heavy. I can't sleep, my mind racing with what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. What if this doesn't fix things? What if we lose everything? James must sense my unease, because he pulls me closer, his hand brushing over my arm. Stop overthinking, he murmurs, his voice soft but firm. I can't help it, I whisper back, my throat tight. We'll be okay, he says, pressing a kiss to my forehead. We'll figure it out. I want to believe him. I want to believe that we can weather this storm, that love will be enough to get us through. But as I close my eyes, all I can feel is the weight of what we're about to lose. And I don't know if love is enough to fix it. Monday morning arrives far too quickly. I barely sleep the night before, and when I wake up, there's a hollow feeling in my chest. James is already up, standing by the window, his back to me as he stares out at the city. The tension in his posture is unmistakable. Are you ready? I ask quietly, sitting up in bed. He turns to face me, his expression calm but tired. As ready as I'll ever be. I get out of bed, crossing the room to stand beside him. We don't say anything for a while, just standing there, side by side, watching the city wake up beneath us. Finally, James breaks the silence. No matter what happens today, Emma, I need you to know that I don't regret this. Not for a second. His words send a rush of warmth through me, but they also make my heart ache. I nod, blinking back the tears that threaten to spill over. I love you. I love you too, he says softly, leaning down to kiss me. And for a moment, everything feels right. Just the two of us, together, standing on the precipice of something new. Something terrifying, but also full of possibility. But the moment doesn't last, because soon we'll have to face the consequences of everything we've done, and once we do, there's no turning back. Chapter 13. The walk into the office on Monday morning feels like a slow march toward the inevitable. James is by my side, as composed and confident as ever, but I know him well enough by now to see the tension coiled just beneath the surface. Every step closer to the boardroom sends a chill through me. It's not just the fear of what's going to happen. It's the dread of what comes after. Today could change everything, not just for James and me, but for our careers, our futures. We step off the elevator, and the air is thick with tension. The office is quieter than usual, like everyone knows something big is about to go down. James gives me a brief, reassuring glance. but we both know that once we step into that room, nothing will ever be the same. When we reach the boardroom, the door is already open, and I can see Catherine Brandt and the other board members seated at the long table, waiting for us. The head of HR, Susan, is there too, her expression unreadable. James squeezes my hand briefly before we step inside. No matter what happens, we're in this together. I nod, though my heart is pounding so hard I can barely think straight. Together. It's the only thing keeping me grounded right now. We take our seats at the far end of the table, and the silence is suffocating. Catherine doesn't waste any time getting to the point. "Mr. Lockhart, Ms. Wright," she begins, her tone as cold and professional as ever. "We've discussed the situation at length, and we've come to a decision." My breath catches in my throat, and I glance at James, trying to read his expression, but his face is unreadable, calm, controlled. How does he do that? Catherine continues, flipping through a file in front of her. "As you are both aware, this company has a strict policy regarding relationships between employees, especially when one party holds a position of authority over the other. This policy exists to protect the integrity of the company and to prevent any potential conflicts of interest." She looks directly at James, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Mr. Lockhart, as CEO, you are held to the highest standard. Your actions set the tone for the entire organization. When rumors about your relationship with Ms. Wright began circulating, it raised serious concerns among the board." I swallow hard, my palms sweating. This is it. They're going to fire him. They're going to fire us both. "We understand that personal relationships can be complex," Catherine says, her voice taking on a slightly softer edge, though it does little to calm the storm brewing inside me. "However, we cannot ignore the potential risks this situation poses to the company. After careful consideration, the board has decided that one of you will need to step down." The words hit like a hammer to my chest. I knew this was coming, but hearing it spoken out loud makes it all too real. I glance at James, expecting him to say something, to argue or negotiate, but instead he sits up straighter, his expression resolute. "I understand," James says, his voice calm but firm, "and I'm prepared to resign." My heart stops. "No," Catherine nods as if this is exactly what she was expecting. "We appreciate your willingness to take responsibility, Mr. Lockhart. However, before we move forward with your resignation, we want to make sure you both understand what this will entail." James nods, his jaw clenched. "I do. But I don't understand any of this. Why is he doing this? Why is he willing to give up everything for me? For us?" I open my mouth to speak, to stop this before it goes any further. But before I can say anything, Catherine continues. "Stepping down as CEO will, of course, come with a severance package and other compensatory measures," she says, her tone clinical. "But it will also mean a complete separation from the company. You will no longer have any decision-making authority, and you will not be permitted to engage in any future business with Lockhart Enterprises." James nods, unfazed, but I can feel the weight of the words pressing down on me like a crushing wave. He's not just stepping down, he's cutting all ties, completely. "And as for Ms. Wright," Catherine says, turning her gaze to me, "there will be no formal disciplinary action taken, provided that this relationship does not interfere with your ability to perform your duties. However, we will expect complete transparency moving forward. Any further complications will be met with swift action." I nod, barely able to breathe. "I understand." "Good," Catherine says, closing the file in front of her. "We will finalize the details of Mr. Lockhart's resignation over the next few days. For now, you are both dismissed." James stands, and I follow, my legs feeling shaky as we leave the boardroom. The door closes behind us, and the silence in the hallway feels deafening. We don't speak as we make our way to James's office. I'm too stunned to say anything, too overwhelmed by everything that just happened. James is leaving. He's stepping down. He's giving up everything for me. When we finally reach his office, he shuts the door behind us, and the reality of what's just happened crashes over me like a tidal wave. "You're really doing this," I whisper, my voice shaking. "You're stepping down." James turns to face me, his expression softening. "I told you, Emma, I'm not letting them take this from us." "But you're giving up your company," I say, my voice breaking. "Everything you've worked for. How can you just walk away?" He steps closer, taking my hands in his. "Because you matter more. We matter more. Tears fill my eyes and I shake my head, trying to hold back the flood of emotions threatening to spill over. You shouldn't have to choose between me and your career. It's not fair. James cups my face in his hands, his gaze intense but filled with so much love it makes my heart ache. This isn't about fair, Emma. It's about what's right. And this. He gestures between us, his voice low and steady. This is right. I close my eyes, leaning into his touch as the tears slip down my cheeks. I've spent so much time being afraid of what this relationship could cost us, but now that it's happening, I realize that I've been afraid of the wrong thing all along. I've been afraid of losing our jobs, our reputations, but the real fear, the one that cuts the deepest, is the thought of losing James. And I can't let that happen. I love you, I whisper, my voice trembling. I love you too, he says, his thumbs brushing away my tears. And that's why this is worth it. I nod, my heart swelling with emotion. He's right. We're worth it. No matter what happens, no matter what we lose, we have each other. We stand there in silence for a long time, wrapped up in each other, letting the weight of the decision sink in. There's still so much to figure out, what James will do next, how we'll navigate the fallout. But for the first time in what feels like forever, I'm not afraid. Because we're in this together. James pulls me closer, resting his forehead against mine. We'll get through this, he whispers, I promise. I nod, closing my eyes as I take a deep breath, letting his words wash over me. I believe him. I believe in us. And as long as we have that, we can weather whatever comes next. Chapter 14. The days following the board meeting pass in a blur of paperwork, meetings, and long, quiet moments between James and me as we come to terms with what's happening. Every morning feels like stepping into an entirely new reality. One where James Lockhart is no longer the CEO of his own company. A reality where the career he built, the empire he led, is something he's willingly walking away from. It's strange seeing him like this. Not the powerful, commanding CEO who once owned every room he walked into, but a man in transition, wrestling with the decision to let go of everything he once thought defined him. I spend my days buried in work, trying to keep my head down and avoid the ever-watchful eyes of my colleagues. The whispers haven't stopped. If anything, they've grown louder now that word has spread that James is stepping down. People know something's going on, even if they don't know the full story. I do my best to ignore it, but every time someone mentions his name, my stomach tightens with guilt. James, on the other hand, seems remarkably calm. He's going through the motions, attending meetings, tying up loose ends. But I know him well enough to sense the internal struggle behind his composed exterior. The night before his final day as CEO, we're sitting on the couch in his penthouse, a half-empty bottle of wine between us. The city lights twinkle outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, but inside, the atmosphere feels heavy, like we're both bracing for something neither of us can fully prepare for. I still can't believe you're really leaving, I say quietly, swirling the wine in my glass. James leans back, his arm draped across the back of the couch, his gaze distant. It's strange, he admits, his voice softer than usual. I've spent so many years focused on this company, on building it from the ground up, and now it feels like I'm letting go of a part of myself. I nod, understanding the weight of his words. Are you sure you're okay with this? He looks at me, and for the first time in days, I see a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. I won't lie, it's hard. But I'm sure, Emma. I've made my peace with it. I reach over, placing my hand on his, the warmth of his skin grounding me. You're still James Lockhart, with or without the title. This doesn't define you. He gives me a small, grateful smile. It's not the title I'm worried about, it's what comes next. What do you mean? James exhales, running a hand through his hair. I've always had a plan, a clear path. I knew exactly what I wanted, what I needed to do to get there. But now, I don't know. I'm stepping into the unknown. His words hit me harder than I expected. James has always been the man with a plan, the one who knows exactly what to do in every situation. Seeing him like this, unsure, vulnerable, makes me realize how much he's giving up for us. You don't have to figure it all out right now, I say softly, squeezing his hand. You can take your time. He nods, but I can see the weight of uncertainty in his eyes. I know, it's just strange not having control. I look at him, really look at him, and I realize how much he's been holding inside. He's been strong for me, for both of us. But I can see the cracks now. The uncertainty, the fear of what's next. Whatever happens, I say, my voice trembling slightly, we'll figure it out together. You don't have to go through this alone. James meets my gaze, his expression softening. He leans in, pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. I don't know what I'd do without you, he murmurs. You don't have to find out, I whisper back, my heart swelling with emotion. We sit in comfortable silence for a while, the city lights casting a soft glow around us. I feel the weight of the moment, the significance of what tomorrow will bring. But for now, I just want to be here with him. The next day feels like the end of an era. James arrives at the office earlier than usual, and I'm right there with him. It's a strange feeling, walking into work together, knowing that this is the last time we'll do this while he's CEO. There's a quiet tension in the air, not just between us, but throughout the entire office. People know what's coming. James spends the morning in back-to-back meetings with the board and senior leadership, finalizing the details of his resignation. I try to focus on my own work, but my mind keeps drifting back to him, wondering how he's holding up, wondering what's going through his mind as he hands over the reins of the company he built. At noon, James sends me a text. James, meet me in my office at 3. Last meeting of the day. The simplicity of the message feels like a punch to the gut. His last meeting. The final chapter of this part of his life. When 3 o'clock rolls around, I take a deep breath and head to his office. My heart is pounding as I walk through the hallway, my thoughts racing. I know this is a turning point, not just for James, but for us. Everything is about to change. I knock softly on the door before stepping inside. James is standing by the window, looking out at the city, his back to me. The room feels eerily quiet, like the calm before a storm. You wanted to see me? I ask, my voice tentative. James turns to face me, his expression unreadable. Yeah, come in. I walk over to him. And for a moment, neither of us says anything. The weight of the day hangs between us, and I can feel the tension in the air. It's done, James finally says, his voice low. I signed the paperwork. It's official. My heart aches at the finality of his words. How do you feel? He pauses, then lets out a slow breath. Relieved, I think, but also lost. I step closer, reaching for his hand. You're not lost, James. This is just a new chapter. He looks at me, his eyes softening. You're right. I've been thinking about what's next. And, James gives me a small, tired smile. I don't know yet, but I do know that I want to figure it out with you. The warmth of his words settles over me like a blanket, and for the first time in days, I feel a sense of calm. We don't have all the answers, but we have each other. And maybe that's enough. I'm here, I say softly, squeezing his hand. Whatever happens next, we'll figure it out. James leans down, pressing a soft kiss to my lips. It's gentle, unhurried, but filled with emotion. When he pulls back, his gaze lingers on mine, and for the first time today, I see a flicker of hope in his eyes. I don't regret any of this, Emma, he murmurs. Not for a second. Tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I smile through them. Neither do I. We stand there for a long moment, wrapped up in each other, letting the world outside fade away. It's just the two of us now. And while the future feels uncertain, I know we'll face it together. As we leave the office hand in hand, I glance back one last time, knowing that this chapter of James's life is closing. But as we step into the elevator and the doors slide shut behind us, I realize that the next chapter is just beginning. And whatever comes next, we're ready for it.